Alistair Cooke speaks on the state of the English language. I apologize for taking out a script. I am in the habit, myself, especially after dinner, of speaking off the cuff or the top of my head, according to which is more available at the time. This is an occasion with a special hazard. I am facing a pack of linguistic watchdogs who, like the people who review anthologies, are not going to be impressed by a wealth of accurate knowledge, even if I had it, so much as by small omissions and single slips. As when J.B. Sykes put out, after 7 years of lonely labor, his monumental New Concise Oxford Dictionary, a small monument but an exquisite one London reviewer spent little time applauding the thousands of definitions that are miracles of clarity and exactness. He took up most of his column protesting the secondary definition given to a simple four-letter word that, Sykes said, was a slang term of abuse applied usually to a woman. Not so, said the reviewer, and he went on and on about Sykes' insensitivity to pejorative usage in general, and this cutting example in particular. I blush, even in this year of liberation, to pronounce the word. I leave you to rush home, get out your Sykes, and, beginning with the letter A, keep going till you find it. I am told that the coming seminars will be addressed by experts in legal English and black English, and everything in the new Episcopalian liturgy to the new liturgy of copulation. I am honored to be invited to kick off the series of matches between the structuralists and the semanticists, and the other fashionable combatants. 50 years ago I might have had something special to offer, for it was a time when I sat at the feet of Dr. Richards trying to fathom the meaning of meaning, start talking like John Bunyan, or Defoe, or Lincoln, or Art Buchwald. I am thinking rather of the millions of school children who might yet be saved. Children to whom a television set is, in a literal sense, more impressive than any teacher they hear in a classroom. Who is to train them in the splendid flexibility of English tenses? Who is going to get them used to saying because instead of in view of the fact that? Who is to warn them that in terms of is usually a way of vamping till you're ready to think? Who is to give them warning signals about the whole grammar of anxiety, which springs from the chronic fear of being thought uneducated or banal, and coin such things as, more importantly, he invited Mary and I, when I was first introduced, and the end result. Is anybody, in any high school in this country or in Britain, doing, under the lively influence of old Quiller Couch and Fowler Brothers, what was done to me, giving out every so often a list of vogue words and buzzwords and current jargon, which you must translate into simple English, and so need never use. If this had happened soon enough, and was a standard routine of early education, we should now have politicians who tell us what they have in mind, instead of which scenarios they are in the process of orchestrating. I have an English friend, the chairman of an advertising firm, who had the luck to go, 40-some years ago, to an English elementary school. Otherwise, he might be considered, as an advertising man, a kind of genius, for he is proof against genteelisms, circumlocutions, and general pomp. A few months ago, he sent a memo to his copywriters. It said, "On their way across the Atlantic are one or two pernicious buzzwords. The latest have been invented by dramatic critics, but you might be tempted to pick them up and apply them to some product or fashion model. An actor is now said to give a resonant performance. The movie critics have just discovered that the chief virtue of every sympathetic actress is that she is vulnerable. I also caught one of you last week using the most meaningless word in the language, meaningful. Wake up, beware." What is the point of sending promising students, what in American we call very bright students, running after courses in creative writing when they haven't learned to walk with simple adverbs and prepositions? There is surely no point whatever in setting up a course in the works of S.J. Perelman, which since he has died, they will soon be doing. For any student who has not acquired considerable sophistication in sensing the emotional tone, what you might call the secret public attitude, of various vocabularies from the Anglo-Saxon chronicles to Time, from Thackeray to Erica Jong. We are back with the impressionable child who sits before the tube for several hours a day, and gradually ceases to know the words early and late are going from the language. Americans are either ahead of schedule or behind schedule. No child today has heard of toothpaste. My grandson, at the age of 3, babbled for his dentifrice. Long before he gets false teeth or dentures, he'll want some personal notepaper, but he'll have to ask for personalized notepaper. At the moment, his teacher tells us he cannot be said to love football. He is football-oriented. No American girl with cracked lips is told how to moisten them. She is handed a moisturizer by a mother who no doubt thinks of herself as nothing so square as a good parent, but as a supportive or caring one, but doesn't care enough to stop her child imbibing from the telly at a fearful daily rate words, locutions, solecisms, and absurdities beyond the wit or attention of its teachers ever to correct. Children listen to the evening weather reports. They must be now inured to the fact, which may astonish some of our English viewers, that in the United States there is no longer any thunder, any rain, hail or snow, and no clouds. There is only thunderstorm activity and precipitation activity and cloud cover. A television weatherman told me the other evening that precipitation activity was spreading down from Illinois area through Kentucky and Tennessee areas into the Mississippi area. Poor Jack Teagarden. If he were alive today, he would have to sing Stars Fell on the Alabama Area. Area is my all-time non-favorite. A cloudy word that has blanketed and hence obliterated the differences between neighborhood, district, part of town, region, state, field of study, topic, theme. Airplanes used to stop at the gate. Now they make a complete stop at the gate area, from which you proceed to the baggage claim area and on to the New York or Dallas or San Francisco area. I once asked a skittish and amiable stewardess, or in-flight hostess, how is it possible to be approaching the San Francisco area without approaching San Francisco? She looked alarmed. Search me, she said. My theory is simple, if revolutionary. There is an area of the United States that was named Illinois. There's another called New York, and yet another called Boston. However more they expand, that is what they should be called. When the time comes, I should be happy if they chiseled on my gravestone, he killed off area. I used to think that Americans were much better informed than Britons about medicine, because they use, with enviable flipness, exact medical terms like deviated septum or congested sinuses, whereas Britons tended to go around grumbling about their catarrh. Catarrh in my day covered everything from pneumonia to a brain tumor. I remember becoming so ashamed of my lumpish ignorance of such things that I stopped talking about my lumbago, or rheumatics, and learned to toss off words like sacroiliac and slip disc, even after an orthopedic surgeon asked me what I meant by it. It took some years for me to discover that the ordinary American, the layman, was no more knowledgeable than his British counterpart. He simply yielded to the national love of Latin and Greek, especially if he knew no Latin or Greek. Thus, I was enormously impressed when I heard somebody say, at a cocktail party, that he'd suffered a lesion of or to his clavicle. I tiptoed off to the dictionary to learn about this exotic affliction. What do you think? He'd hurt his collarbone. It used to be, and I like to think it's still so in some English-speaking countries, that when you had a pain and went to the doctor, a friend would say, "What did he do for you?" And you'd say, "He gave me a pill." No longer, not in this country. You are given medication and are not being treated. You are undergoing therapy, treatment in Greek. Chemotherapy, which means no more than treatment by a chemical, is now so exclusively applied to cancer that it seems cruel to remark that almost everything you put in your mouth, from an aspirin to a hamburger, is a chemical. Another medical word that is very popular in America, and has been, I should guess, for a couple of decades, is the magic word virus. All suffering people drop it to explain everything from a sniffle to a drowsiness. I used to drop it myself till a doctor present said thoughtfully, "I don't think it's a virus. I doubt it has a protein coat." That's a stopper if you ever heard one. I looked that up too, and I'm ready any time for any pedant who fixes me with his ancient mariner eye and says, "Do you know exactly what a virus is?" I reply at once, "Sure thing." Any of numerous kinds of very simple organisms smaller than bacteria, mainly of nucleic acid and protein coat, existing only in living cells, and able to cause diseases. That shuts them up, even though I wouldn't know a nucleic acid if it were served to me chilled, with an olive in a glass. Some years ago, when I was traveling all over the country filming my television series America, one of the young women on the crew, a shrewd, modest English girl who had not seen here before, said, "They are a marvelous warm people, and their slang is so racy." But why is that in print or in public? The rule seems to be never say in 2 syllables what you can say in 5? Where did it all start? Well, there are 2 its here: the obsessive love of Latinism and the disastrous decline in the teaching of elementary grammar and plain speaking. I suspect that the early warning signal of a coming influx of polysyllables was the decision, I think in Goethe's time, by the University of Göttingen to begin and maintain a close relation with Harvard. It was enough, after a liberal revolution of 1848, and more than enough in the later trek of German exiles, to guarantee invading hordes of sociologists and psychiatrists. It has become a badge, almost a sworn oath, of their trade that it is better to be overwrought than oversimple. That Anglo-Saxon English is a naive tool for examining human behavior either in the individual or in the mass. That the love of a man for a maid is not to be undertaken lightly, but gravely, writhingly, humorlessly, pedantically, as a perilous adventure in interpersonal relationships. As for the decline in teaching grammar, in some schools the deliberate abandoning of it, I believe it started when John Dewey conceived the beguiling theory that all knowledge can be fun, if not orgasmic. The application of this theory far and wide by slap-happy people who thought of themselves as progressives led in the fullness of time to a masterpiece of wishful thinking that I saw enshrined in a newspaper ad at the end of last March. It said, "You can learn French by the 15th of May, with no effort on your part." I thought of Charles Darwin, going down to various seashores, on and off for over 40 years, with a broken teacup that had no grant from a National Science Foundation, and scooping up sand and algae and brooning over them. The end of which time, after considerable effort on his part, he published The Origin of Species. But then, Darwin was a Victorian, and he held to the Victorian prejudice that any knowledge that goes much below the surface takes time and tedium to acquire, however bright the student. Some years ago, I was saying much of this, as it applied to the jargon of medicine, to the assembled staff of the Mayo Clinic. I mused that perhaps, after all, an appetite for jargon might be imbibed with the mother's milk, a matter of genes. I was rash enough to conclude, maybe you can no more cure a nationally pompous person than you can reflower a virgin. My lecture was reprinted in the Mayo Clinic Bulletin, which goes to the far corners of the earth. One of the first letters I received was from the University of Tokyo's Department of Gynecology. It said, "But Mr. Cooke, we do it." If they can do it, maybe our high school teachers can make it unnecessary by encouraging and training the child's instinct for directness and simplicity before the hymen, so to speak, if its innocence is broken. At any rate, I'm convinced that it is in the high schools, at the latest, that the old custom should be revived. The teaching first of grammar and idiom, and then of cautionary courses in current jargon. The time to rinse the mind free of a verbal cant cannot begin too early. I trust that the development of this basic linguistic concept mandates no further elaboration at this point in time. Or, as Chancer more aptly put it, there is no more to say, except thank you and have a nice day in the San Francisco area.